This is the Realty Classroom Podcast, episode number 74, Work in the Real World. Are you a real estate agent with an entrepreneurial spirit who wants to turn your job into a business without sacrificing your lifestyle, but you just can't seem to find the right plan to help you get there? Well, then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Realty Classroom and the host of this podcast. Now, to help you get started immediately in a better direction if you're already in the business, or get started in the right direction, I've created a free jumpstart course over at freeagentgift.com. What it is, it's an on-demand digital layout of the framework for managing your agent business. Now, get over there. I wish I had started with this, but I also adhere to it to this very day, and I am a very active broker owner in the field with real sellers especially and buyers. I'm out there every day. This plan gets refined, and I share it with you so that you can run a better business. All right, let's get started. Working in the real world. What's he talking about this time? Well, this concept of all of these gurus online that are teaching anything and everything under the sun, it's as if all of a sudden you're supposed to adhere to what all this advice is versus trusting yourself. And the problem with all this advice online and that you see out there in books or wherever it might be, it doesn't matter what media the information comes to you, it's confusing. There's a lot of it. Who's right? Who's an authority? Who's not an authority? And it becomes confusing. So what I want you to do is trust yourself. It's a great place to start. Any small business is trusting yourself with some basics. And the first point that I want to bring to you is you don't have to be a know-it-all to start. Look, I had no idea what the real estate agency business was like or agent business, but I was confident that I was bringing my life skill set. I mean, look, I had survived in life for quite some time up until I got my real estate license, and I'd learned quite a bit on how to help people, how to deal in business. I learned a lot. I had been well studied, etc. So, I mean, it's not like I walked into this industry with no human-to-human skill set. Neither do you. And that's why you're getting into it to begin with. So have some confidence that you're going to learn along the way and that you don't have to know it all, quote unquote, about real estate agency. Sure, there are some basics that you'll need. You'll need to know what is the framework for taking a seller through the process, the framework for taking a buyer through the process. You want to learn that from somebody, and hopefully you get a heavy dose of it right here. Hopefully you get, an idea of how the business works for me with that free plan, right? So you get into learning and not worrying about being a know-it-all. Now, I do have to give all my top producer listeners a caveat here. Always be learning. I can't believe how many people I talk to where very quickly, and I don't even think half of them know they say it, oh, I already know that. What? You already know what? My gosh, I mean, every single week that I wake up with this, this, not anxiety, that wouldn't be right, but this curiosity. What don't I know yet? What haven't I put in the right order yet? So it's this process. The first point is here, don't worry about having to know it all and be careful about thinking you know it all because both are problematic. And that brings us to the next point. Well, what do you mean? If you're going to be curious about learning every day, what do you mean? Give me some direction. Okay, I will. You're actually in this business like any small business trying to solve the hero's problem. Okay, let that sink in for a second. You're trying to solve the hero's problem. And you, me, we are not the hero of this story. We are the guide. You see, small business people who are in the service business are guiding people. So if you're the guide, you are the supporting actor or actress. You are not the hero. You're not the top billing. You are the supporter. And that's what you get paid to do. So you want to do that well. So if you remember that as a positioning, I think you get started in this business relaxing a little bit more. Oh, okay, great. So the pressure's not on me to do this tap dance and this song and dance every day. It's to be a supporting role. That's my role. So now you have to begin to try to figure out, well, what do you mean by problems? Now remember, that's what makes real estate agency so interesting. This is one of the single largest financial and emotional transactions that most people are ever going to make in their lifetime. And I don't care what their level of education is. I've seen PhDs freak out when it comes to trying to deal with a house. I've seen people that have barely an education go through it so smoothly because they're emotionally mature. So you don't know what the problem is really going to be, other than the fact that you can bracket it inside of this massive financial and emotional transaction. So remember that that's actually the number one problem, is just navigating a real estate purchase or sale. That's the number one problem we have, right? So what you do, taking it a level deeper, is the third point here. You seek to identify the problem. You seek to identify the problem. Okay, let me pull those two concepts together. For me, one of the greatest distinctions I've made over the last several years, probably even 24 months, was that I was smart enough somehow to stumble into giving myself and sharing with you a framework for dealing generally with sellers and buyers. So what I did was I made myself a checklist, and I kept making it smaller and smaller and smaller. By the way, an Einstein principle. Make it the simplest it can be without being too simple, meaning you left something out that's absolutely foundational. So I went through and I came up with 7 steps to helping a seller generally, and 6 steps to helping a buyer. So for example, the sell side, which I'm really rooted in right now, pricing. That leads to the next conversation about conditioning, next conversation about staging, marketing, communication during the ins and outs of showing the property, negotiation and closing. To me, those were chunked up pieces of the general process of helping somebody sell a property. So that was an example. So when I had that, I had a framework against which I could support what I was seeking for the individual seller. Okay? Let that sink in for a second. If generally all of us are following a universal system, which we are. I mean, look, I don't care where you are. There's an order to things to get a house sold. It just is. And we could debate all day long, which would be a complete waste of time, what you believe the chunks are versus me. It doesn't matter. The point is you do it, and it serves as this foundation upon which we can serve better. See, because if you come in to serve, and I'm going to stay with a seller for a second here. If you come in to serve a seller, that's what you're doing. Well, if you're making it up as you go along, you're not telling the seller where you are in the process. Think about a Sherpa, a local villager, trying to help somebody climb Mount Everest. Well, you sit down at base camp, the very bottom, and you start off talking about what the stages will be to get to the top. That's what you do. And you keep reiterating where you are in that process along the way, so that that traveler, that would-be summit seeker, understands where you are. And it's just a more organized process. And that's a much better supporting role that you're playing because you started correctly. That's what I mean by a foundational starting point. But what that allows me to do is that, let's just say I'm in the first stage with somebody. Now all of a sudden I get to observe them individually, because we're stuck in that first stage, which we have to go through in general anyway. But now I'm listening. I'm seeking, well, how do you feel about this? What are you worried about? Well, it turns out that you're a little bit more afraid of the process than you thought. Yes, geez, I didn't realize this was going to go so smoothly, and it's upon me that I'm going to have to move. Danny, I'm worried about where I'm going to go. Don't worry. Let's slow the process down. Let's just take a little breather, and let's talk about that. And now that allows me to seek to identify the individual problem, not the general problem. See, the general problem should be easy for a mastermind group of all of us entrepreneurial real estate agents to discuss, chunk it up, and have this nice shared foundation with small variations for each of us, but a foundation. So now we're supported as a group, as a studied group of real estate agents, professional. I call real estate agents, by the way, everybody probably has a professional attitude, or they hope to. Not everybody does, but they have a professional attitude. So I don't mean to be derogatory. I mean, professional real estate agents, in my mind's eye, are those that study it and try to make their process better to serve the consumer better. That's a professional approach, which I'm trying to espouse here and share with you and implore you, please take a professional approach to organizing, so that now you can better individually serve, and you can individually serve multiple people at a time when there's a foundation. If there's not, and you're doing it by the seat of your pants, or like I like to say, you're running your business on muscle, you're bringing chaos into this service. And that's doing you an injustice, and especially the consumer. So now that I have these individual problems, I can pay individual attention. It's not slowing me down. It's actually helping me solve that problem. Okay, great. Thanks for reading. I know you probably said this a million times, Danny, but I didn't hear it till just now. Yeah, great. No problem. All good. Let's move along. So by seeking to identify those individual problems, here's another part of this third point that comes up. You're going to see that a lot of people share the same anxieties. They bubble up the same reoccurring problems, right? That's what happens. So we know, for example, that every time somebody gets an offer in their hands, they're going to freak out about the money. So what we did to our system was we went back and said, well, wait a minute. This net sheet, which I've talked about in this podcast before too, this net sheet showing them what they'll walk away with at the price that they're negotiating in and around, this net sheet becomes a critical component. How come we're not systematically giving that to them from the very time we first meet with them to help them focus on that, but saying, look, when we get to this stage, this fifth stage about negotiation, we want you to pull that out and be ready to go. Sixth stage, right? After communication back and forth, there's a sixth stage where negotiation goes down and everybody gets nervous because they don't know what they're going to walk away with. Well, that's a recurring problem. We know that. And you know how I know that? Sold my own house recently. And I was freaking out looking for that thing in the middle of my negotiation. So I was empathetic, feeling what they feel, and said, there's something that recurs, and I felt it heavily. Make sure that becomes part of what we do to serve these people. See how this works? It's pretty simple. There's no rocket science to this. I was identifying, even in myself as a seller, what was critically important in that moment to empower me, to serve me. I know it's weird. It sounds bipolar, right? I was my own broker agent and my seller, right? At the same time. Thank goodness for my partner, Laura, who sat there and calmed me down. But again, I told her, Laura, the thing that got me calmed down was finding our net sheet and having it. Let's not have there be a search time ever again. Say, we have an offer coming in. Get your net sheet ready. If you don't have a copy of it, we'll email it to you so that we can counter this offer appropriately with the bottom line in mind. Very empowering. The whole concept is very empowering and it happens every time. So we do what? Point number 4. We memorialize that solution and make it patent ready. What is he talking about? Well, I talked about building your own franchise before, right? So if you, after doing all of this over and over and over, even if it's just a couple, 2-3 times a year, become a great student of exactly what went down, how it went down, so that what you do is you say, oh, I met this person through a referral source. What referral source? A professional. Really? An attorney. How did you know them? You see what I'm saying? You're going back and taking inventory of success. Tony Robbins says it a gajillion times, success leaves clues. So when you go back and you look at success, one sale even, if you've done one sale, go back and look at it, observe it, understand it, and then memorialize all of the things that went well. But more importantly, where did somebody freak out? Where did you freak out? Where did you start to unwind a little bit and get worried about how things were going down? Memorialize that and solve that because you know that's the problem. So when you memorialize your what? Solution, you're becoming a better service business because you get to repeat it. Now, the way that you memorialize it is as low tech as it gets. Write the dang thing down on a checklist. And again, when I modulize the business for you, are you modularizing something that happened in marketing? Your conversion process, moving them from lead to prospect to client? Was it in your closing process where there was a disaster? And more importantly, which nobody even thinks about after the closing, did you set them up to be family, to repeat and refer and know that, hey, just because I got paid, I'm never going to forget you. You're in the family now, right? It's like the mob. Once you're in, you're not going anywhere. You're part of my family. I'm going to be there for you always. So I think that's the point is that We're rinsing and repeating, but if you don't memorialize, this is something I talk about a lot on this podcast. If you don't write down what you do, there's this little devil called your brain that just stops doing these things. I mean, I hear this all the time as a coach. My gosh, I used to do that. Well, why do we stop? Why do we stop doing anything that's super productive? Well, the reason is because the brain is only looking to survive the day, the hour, the minute. That's all it's looking to do. So if it perceives it needs to break through some threshold to go beyond to thrive, shuts it down, and it starts to wander, and it starts to, take you away from that task in hand. Whereas it would be quite simple to just look at your checklist and in a no-brainer way, let the brain go 1, 2, 3, 4, done. Memorialize your checklist system and make it patent ready, which means that you could recreate it in all these other places. You could sell that patent out to other people who could follow it exactly, and they could stand on your shoulders. That's what I'm trying to do here, okay? So let me go back and reiterate these points. Work in the real world, which means observe how business really works and how people work. That's what I mean. Let that be the greatest teacher of all. I can guide you and throw you out there and, keep you inside the guardrail so you don't crash. But until you go out and live in the real world of real estate agency, you're guessing. So remember, as you go new, you don't have to know it all. If you're a veteran, please stop thinking you do know it all. You don't. None of us do. You're always making distinctions. The distinction that I want you to start with is that you're trying to solve the hero's problem, and that's not you. If you can change that orientation and really, really be about the buyer and seller first, you will have a wonderful, fabulous business that causes you less anxiety because you stopped acting like it was about you. Next point, seek to identify the problem, especially those that reoccur. So the reoccurring problems are those that you can then memorialize your solution to and make it patent ready, meaning repeatable. All right, so summarizing the key point. Stop thinking you have to know it all to be successful. Just fall forward by looking for buyer and seller heroes, identify their problems, and solve them until your rhythm becomes a patented system. All right? Nice little chunk for you. Hey, remember, you can take immediate action to get started in this more professional direction, meaning you're working on it and managing it by going over and getting a free, simple business plan. And I'm always trying to make it better. I give you an infographic you can print out, put up on the wall, so you see the components of this business. It's sitting there waiting for you at freeagentgift.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss out on any insights. Each time we upload an episode, it's always coming straight off of my coaching at a very deep level. We also broadcast our live sales training calls on Facebook and YouTube every Friday at 1 p.m. EDT. So please get over there, turn on your page and channel notifications so that when we go live, you get that little pop. We're there, right? Go turn them on and be ready to join us. We also appreciate it if you would share our content with other entrepreneurial real estate agents just like you so they can get the help that they need. Sharing is caring, and we appreciate that. Hey, thank you for listening. And remember, I tell you this all the time, nobody's coming for you, so go get to work on your own business. See you in the next episode.